Did the CIA have a hand in the murder of John F. Kennedy, an American president? The reply, the answer is yes. It's a whole different country from what we thought it was. It was all fake. Trump has finally came out and said he is going to release every single file that the CIA or any intelligence services or branch of the government are hiding on JFK's assassination. This was meant to be released in 2017. So Trump didn't release every file that was meant to be released in 2017. He did release some files. Biden also released some files. However, there are still about 5% of files still not being released. We're just going to watch a clip here of Trump signing the bill to get every single file released.
And everything will be revealed. Okay? That's you, RFK Jr.
Yes, sir.
Okay? Okay.
The end part there is really nice of him, signing the bill due to the fact that RFK Jr. is part of the Kennedy family and then giving him the pen. That's really nice of Trump. It should have been released. We also have two other names there, Martin Luther King Jr. and then RFK. It makes you wonder why the CIA, whoever it is, why they can't release all the information if they're crystal clean. And they've been dragging their feet across the floor for the government not to release these files. It makes you wonder. So what I'm going to show here is what to expect of these files here. So it'll look something like this. This is from 76. It's not super important here, but these are some of the files that will be released. This is what they look like. It's just a transcript of what's being said. This isn't Lyndon B. Johnson, if you can't see. It's just a guy called Mr. Johnson that was part of the military. I thought it was Lyndon B. Johnson for some reason. So even here, as you can see, he's talking about Cuba here, and then they talk about intelligence rumors about a frogman operation against a Soviet sugar ship. Also here, as we can see here, this was immediately following the British commander Crabb, as I recall it, being his body being found a few days after attempting to investigate a Soviet ship in London. His body was found in shreds. So these are very interesting files that I will link down below for you to have your own viewing. It's so interesting reading about history. Top secret information here. This is what they class as top secret. They're talking about people dying. They're talking about Russian ship. British commander just being found in shreds, in bits, because of him investigating a Russian ship in England. So this is Crabb himself. It was missing its head and both hands, which made it impossible to identify. Body had the same height as Crabb, the same body hair color, and was dressed in the same clothes. Now look, if you see here in 2007, the Independent reported how the government had covered up the death of Buster Crabb. Back in 1968, there was a report that a skull that thought by some to be Crabb's was found in early March 1967 on a beach near Portsmouth. But this is just interesting. This is just part of one of the documents where they talk about what's happened. You know, we see that a CIA agent has then gone to look at what happened with Crabb and investigate it. But that's Crabb there. May he rest in peace. Probably some Russian spy got him. So the rest in peace to him. But what I'm showing there is just some documents as to what you can see here. Stay tuned, because this is supposedly the man that killed JFK, Lee Harvey Oswald. And this was in November 22nd, 1963. See, this is published in 2022. Okay, this is very important information, so stay tuned to this, because it does bring out some light as to what's going to happen with the rest of the evidence. So last week, the Biden administration declassified a trove of documents related to the assassination of President John F. Kennedy. So these are the last documents that have been released since Trump has said he will release all documents. However, there was a law passed in 1992 that said that every file on JFK had to be released by 2017. Gotta remember, this is 2022 now, not 2017. So the CIA or government officials or intelligence services are still telling the government, it doesn't matter who it is, for all that time, if it was Bush to Obama to Trump to Biden, they told them you can't do it. And even Trump still didn't mess around with the CIA. However, this time round, he signed the bill like we saw at the beginning of the video. He's going full to the wall. Now, maybe they said that he could do it. Maybe they said that he could do it. I don't know. But it's very suspicious that there's still about 5% of the files not released. Pretty much every document's been released apart from the most sensitive record secrets. That is the big problem here. They've released pretty much everything apart from the most sensitive record secrets. So this is now talking about Oswald, the guy that supposedly killed JFK. The CIA has long claimed that it had no contact with Lee Harvey Oswald before President Kennedy's assassination. Oswald very much on CIA's radar, and new documents released last week cast even more doubt on the agency's unbelievable claim. The President John F. Kennedy Assassination Record Collection Act passed in 1992. Everything had to be released by 2017, like I said before. Almost 60 years later, what do they still have hidden? So this is Tucker Carlson interviewed someone that was a confidential source with direct access to the undisclosed documents, and that those documents include a bombshell. So Tucker Carlson said that he spoke to someone who had access to the still hidden CIA documents. Did the CIA have a hand in the murder of John F. Kennedy, an American president? The reply: the answer is yes. I believe they were involved. It's a whole different country from what we thought it was. It was all fake. So Tucker Carlson also said the people who knew would include every director of the CIA since November of '63. So that includes Obama's director, John Brennan, and also Mike Pompeo, or whatever his name is. Probably not the place that got absolutely annihilated by a volcano and they turned into dust. But that's what probably the CIA wants the documents on JFK to happen. And it might actually happen. Epstein. But that's very interesting. So every single director of the CIA has known since '63 what has happened to JFK. Every single director. So Trump gave them a pass in 2017 and let them keep about 15,000 documents secret. Biden gave them a pass last year. They coughed up another 1,000, and then yesterday the CIA coughed up about 7,000 records. But there are still 4,000 JFK records generated by the CIA that contain redactions. So this is now talking about Lee Harvey Oswald. So New Orleans is important because when Oswald goes to New Orleans, he had gone to the Soviet Union as a true believer in socialism and communism. And until April 1963, Oswald had no visible connection or interest in the Cuba issue. And when he goes to New Orleans, he starts writing to the Fair Play for Cuba Committee in New York and asking for material, says he wants to start a chapter. In August '63, he came out publicly about it. He does come out publicly as a Castro supporter. It is entirely because of his encounters with a CIA-sponsored propaganda group called the Cuban Student Director. So this was funded under the CIA under a program called AM/Spell. We move further on. They then go to say that was a very powerful propaganda theme, and we now know that it was generated by a CIA propaganda operation. And you can see here they say it's also why it's still shrouded in official secrecy, with Oswald going to New Orleans. Connection there with the communist ties. That led to kind of the contra-pro side of it, which is this here. It was ran by the FBI. It was illegal operations and projects that were conducted by 1956 to 71. The CIA's interest in the Fair Play for Cuba Committee and the fact that the question of Oswald and the Cubans over time, that's the last thing the CIA surrenders in any given context. And so they lie to the Warren Commission and they say, we didn't know Oswald was in the Cuban consulate in Mexico City until after the assassination. So if you don't know the Warren Commission, it was set up by Lyndon B. Johnson, the president after JFK Jr., set up November 29, 1963, disbanded in 1964. Essentially, they were to look into the assassination attempt of JFK Jr. So that's what the Warren Commission was. That wasn't true. Winston Scott, the CIA station chief, knew right away Oswald hadn't been there. Why are they lying about that? And if you see that pattern of deception, to me, some people say that's just incompetence and all that. No, that's how you conceal an operation, is you never talk about the sources and methods, even with your closest colleagues. Now, is that a CIA plot to kill the president? I've also come to the conclusion that I don't assume that. Remember, the CIA is a junior agency in 1963. It's only 16 years old, okay? Now, before you flip out about this guy saying it wasn't the CIA, listen to what he has to say next. We may see an operation against Oswald that was controlled by the Pentagon, not by the CIA. So it goes further up than the CIA. Well, you got to remember, the CIA wasn't what it is today. It wasn't. It was a very new operation, intelligence services looking to make a name for themselves. This is now being related to the Pentagon, which is worse, because the argument could be with the CIA was that it was a new branch, they were out of control, the whole Soviet thing was mental, the whole communist spying thing was mental. But now when you relate it to the Pentagon has no excuse to create an assassination on a president of the United States of America. That goes against absolutely everything a democratic country is set for. It's not just focused on America, it's focused on every democratic country. If a government, the Pentagon in America, has decided to assassinate a president because they don't like him, this is the highest treason you can do in America, is to kill the president of the United States of America. And what this guy is saying is true. That means bad news for the Pentagon. That means bad news for the government. That means bad news for what the public think of the government. Now, this can be completely swept under the rug due to the fact it was 1960 odd. It's already been mentioned before. America was so much different then. It was all fake. But can we really say it's all fake? Edward Snowden, 10 years ago roughly, brought out about the NSA and CIA, the Five Eyes, spying on neighboring countries. This is like America, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and England, I believe it is, spying on Germany, on France, politicians from those countries. The NSA and CIA using webcams without people noticing. You know, you would have been a conspiracy theorist if you were to say this. So has much changed since then? Yeah, okay, assassination didn't happen to a president, but you can look at Donald Trump recently. Is there questions to say that there were an ulterior motive with the Pentagon or intelligence services trying to get Trump out? I don't know, but it's not as simple as saying, well, this was ages ago, considering there's been so many leaks of the government spying on people, the general public, when they say they would never do that. Let's move on. The CIA operations around Oswald are crucial, but that doesn't mean the CIA was calling the shots. So as we can see here, the interview says, is it still the same figures? Cord Meyer, Angleton, Alan Dulles, Howard Hunt, and on and on? Yes, I think that's clear that the Operation New Orleans, which was run on the ground by a guy named George Jonas out of the Miami station. He was no rogue, he was doing exactly what someone above him wanted, and I think that's a key question. Who was running this operation? So he goes on to say, I think Bill Harvey, who was the head of the CIA assassination program, is a possibility. James Angleton, chief of counterintelligence, who also ran operations and black operations as a candidate. And it could also be someone in the military. So very briefly, we're going to look at these people that he's named. William King Bill Harvey, 1915 to 76. He was known for Operation Mongoose. So that was a secret program against Cuba that aimed to remove this Cuban government from power and force the Cuban government to introduce intrusive civil measures and divert precious resources to protect its citizens from the attacks. The removal of Castro government was a prime focus on the Kennedy administration. So Kennedy wasn't already clear. You know, Bay of Pigs, he hated the idea of completely, but you know, this was something that Kennedy wanted to do. So this was actually after the failure of the Bay of Pigs too. Operation Mongoose was an extensive campaign of terrorist attacks against civilians and covert operations. So he's also been known as America's James Bond. So this is another guy, James Angleton, James Jesus Angleton, 1917 to 1987. So just to show the power this guy had, this was released in 2007 under an investigation in 1970 of the Church Committee. This verified the far-reaching power and influence that Angleton wielded during his long tenure. It was revealed that Angleton planned infiltration of law enforcement and military organizations in other countries was used to increase the influence of the United States. It's also confirmed past rumors that it was Angleton who was in charge of the domestic spying activities of the CIA under Operation Chaos. This once again was spying on the general public under the fray of national security. They were looking to see if there was any foreign influence on domestic race. So these are just to show you who possibly could have been involved of leading the assassination attempt on JFK Jr. I'm just showing you the power that these people had. So this next paragraph is about Howard Hunt, who is this guy here. He was part of the CIA and also wrote books for him. Part of his CIA operations where he was a central figure in US regime change in Latin America included the 1954 Guatemalan coup and a 1961 bail evasion in Cuba. Okay, so this guy was very bloody powerful. What do you make of Howard Hunt's famous Rolling Stone deathbed admission? His claims that he told the conspirators, "I'm not getting involved in anything that Bill Harvey's involved with," but that he knew that a conspiracy was being put together and told his son about it later in life. Come on now. So we go forward in time. So this is about 2016 to 27 while Trump was in his first term. What did you make of Roger Stone, his ability to persuade Trump to follow through with the JFK Records Act and release the documents? Because if Roger Stone couldn't extract them, who's going to be able to get these out of the CIA clutches? So Roger Stone's an American lobbyist. So now this is going to relate to Biden just being in power. Trump's a transactional guy. When he had a chance to do this, he realized it wasn't in his interest to piss off the CIA, and Biden makes the same calculations. Biden's got a war to fight. So I think the CIA is going to drag this out as long as they can, kick the can down the road, nothing care, please move on, see you later, go home. Well, the CIA, Trump just put a massive roadblock, you've kicked a can, it's hit a wall, you look up, and guess what? You can't hide from the truth now, the CIA. And if it's not the CIA, it's the Pentagon. Everything has to be released. There are 4,000 documents that haven't been released, or up to 4,000 documents that haven't been released. That's about 5%, 1% of the documents that haven't been released. As we can see in 2023, the National Archives concludes review of JFK's assassination documents with 99% made public. See, this is my problem, okay? If the files come out and there's nothing to do with any form of assassination attempt, nothing to do with it, okay? Then we're still going to think you're hiding stuff. We're still going to think there's going to be some form of area where you can't release it. Because there are so many connections that we've gone through in this video about Lee Harvey Oswald, the CIA in New Orleans, with his communist ties, with the CIA-backed group, with these ex-CIA directors, these ex-CIA people with a lot of power saying there may be a conspiracy. There potentially might be a conspiracy. You know, you look at other conspiracies at that time with Bay of Pigs, okay? Insane. The people that we looked up, the people that potentially might be head of that operation, we've seen what they could do. And one of it was the Bay of Pigs, okay? One of it was spying on US citizens. One of it was going into Cuba and trying to create internal war there. These people, it's not out of the ordinary they're going to kill someone that maybe potentially is important, especially when it's been said America back then was fake. It's not like it was now. The thing is, intelligence services would have had a lot of power. The Pentagon would have had a lot of power because of the communist ties, because this is post-war America. They don't want another world war. They don't want a rise in fascism. Fascism was 20 years earlier. Now it's communism. We don't want that communist wave. They know how big at that time communism was. They know how big the Soviet Union was. I'll give you an interesting fact. Do you know the reason why America had to go to Vietnam? Do you know why? After World War II, France decided they wanted Vietnam back. After being pounded by the Germans about being oppressed, they then go to war. And not soon after the fact they'd just been liberated, they go to war with Vietnam to take it back. Do you know what they say to America when they needed help? America was very hesitant at first. They didn't want another war. They didn't want to be involved in another war. The public didn't want to get involved in World War II, but they had to. France said, well, if you don't give us arms, the Soviet Union looks nice. So that's the extent of power the Soviet Union had over America, that communist wave of red terror, because they were so frightened that a European ally, France, was going to say, we're going to have ties with the Soviet Union. They were willing to go to war with Vietnam to fight communism about 10 years later, but they were willing to give aid to France when they didn't want to because they were worried about France going to the communist regime. So is it out of the ordinary, everything that I've said today? Is it out of the ordinary with my conclusion that potentially the CIA, the FBI, the Pentagon, or whoever had Lee Harvey Oswald as the second shooter, the first shooter, the fake shooter, and it was someone else, and it was an assassination because they wanted to get rid of JFK Jr. because he was stopping them doing what they wanted to do in Cuba, in these other smaller countries that had communist ties? It is a very big possibility. Even looking at MKUltra, okay? MKUltra is when the CIA had LSD as a use to try and control people. Now, there's heavy links to to what Tom O'Neill, who wrote a book called Chaos, who went on Joe Rogan, a very good podcast episode. I really recommend you watch it if you're into conspiracy theories. I mean, it's not even a conspiracy theory. MKUltra was a real thing that's literally been announced as a real thing. But supposedly the head psychiatrist of MKUltra, went to go see Charles Manson many times. And also Charles Manson was in prison a lot in his life, and he kept getting out. And there's only two ways. He's either an informant, so a snitch, or he was working with the government for something. And potentially the links lie with this head of psychiatry from MKUltra seeing Charles Manson. And this guy's also related to the assassination of JFK. Okay, so these are one of the files that were released under Biden, a new clue last week to a relationship between Lee Harvey Oswald, the Central Intelligence Agency, among the intersections between Oswald and CIA, and his time as a young Marine. Like I mentioned before, the CIA said they had no claim. However, George D. Munchenshit, whatever the fuck that name is, this bloke here, who was a geologist, so he's Randy Marsh, a CIA asset, became close friends with Oswald in the months before the assassination. That spring, D, whatever the fuck your name is, traveled to New York, Philadelphia and Washington according to documents found in the newly declassified files. At the same time as his trip, the CIA Domestic Operations Division ran a search on this bloke. Exact reasons unknown, according to two documents created by CIA analysts, including last week's declassification. The Covert Armor Division was run at the time by E. Howard Hunt, a black ops specialist who confessed later in life to learning ahead of time of a conspiracy to assassinate Kennedy that involved high-level figures in the CIA. So one of the theories is Kennedy firing Jules, who used to be the director of the CIA, due to the fact of the failed CIA Bail Pigs operation. If Jules did do a coup against Kennedy, it would be far from his first. So a report from 78, finance clerk with the CIA, James Wilcott Jr., had formed a house panel exploring an assassination that the CIA hired Lee Harvey Oswald when Oswald served in this place. The memo goes on to cast doubt on Wilcott's claim, noting that he arrived in Tokyo in 1960 after Oswald had left the base, suggesting that Wilcott's claim is based on a second-hand information. So that's a rebuttal there through the claim of James Wilcott Jr. So the whole big thing with Oswald is that he went to Russia and said he was a defector. Now, the embassy staff later recalled that his defection speech sounded odd and rehearsed. He spent 2.5 years in the Soviet Union, and then just as curiously as he defected, he returned home to the United States. If the series of moves from the discharge to the flight to the defection to the return were made at the behest of the CIA, they make sense. Oswald playing some type of role in the inscrutable world of spycraft. Absent an intelligent link, the TikTok of Oswald's post-military years would be situated somewhere between extraordinary, impulsive to impossible to pull off. So this is about psychedelics, so LSD, MKUltra. Jules, who is the ex-CIA director at the time, he got fired from the Bear Pigs by Kennedy. He was aware of the activities, even proposing some of the use. Even CIA director briefed Richard Nixon, then the vice president, to use it against Fidel Castro. I don't know how true this is, AI overview, but the CIA was one of the few suppliers of LSD, a psychoactive substance used in mind control experiments on Marines at that base I couldn't pronounce in Japan. And then also Oswald's address book contained the phone number of the CIA. Come on. So as we can see here, like I said before, he was in Japan at that naval base in 1957. This was a launching pad for U-2 spy flights over the Soviet Union and was also a hub for the CIA's research into psychedelic drugs. A CIA memo titled Truth, Drugs in Interrogation revealed the agency practiced on dosing agents who were marked for dangerous overseas missions in Japan. Goes to Soviet Union's embassy. He defects to the Soviet Union's embassy, comes back 2 years later in America, has the CIA's phone number in his phone book, met up with a CIA operator as a friend. The CIA denounced the fact that they ever met Lee Harvey Oswald. They lied to the commission. It came out afterwards that they did. Now, this is up to you if you want to believe this. You don't have to believe this. You may think I'm a gigantic conspiracist, but I have came with facts here that you can see for yourself. I showed you the people. I've referred to other cases and shown you the cases of CIA operations that either went horrifically wrong or are immorally wrong because they wanted to tackle the Soviet Union, the communist red tide, the social issues in America, and to have complete control power over anyone they want, including the President of the United States of America at the time, JFK, and making one fatal mistake, one small move that they didn't like, getting rid of the director of the CIA. Was he the guy that was behind it with his other cronies to take out JFK Jr., to take out Robert Kennedy, to take out Martin Luther King Jr., because they were putting too much pressure on them and they wanted to roam freely? And they showed you how much power they actually have. I can't wait to read the rest of these documents. Follow this channel if you want to keep up to date with it. I'll be making sure, keeping my eyes open for when these documents will be released. I'll be looking into it. In the meantime, I'm going to be looking into more files so I can be more up to date. I'll be releasing more stuff on JFK's Jr. running up to the release of the final up to 4,000 documents that can't be redacted, that can't be not shown. We know the CIA and how they operate. Let's hope they operate with good faith now. I don't think it will change anything at all. Everyone pretty much knows JFK got assassinated from the intelligence services. It's just about time that we can actually have the truth. There's a lot of bad stuff that's being released already. Edward Snowden's leaks, Bay of Pigs, Watergate. There's a load of stuff. You know, MKUltra, not even government tied, but elite tied with Bohemian Grove. There's conspiracy theories with recent history with 9/11. But if you enjoy this content, give it a subscribe, give it a like. I want to know what your guys' opinion is down below. Have a lovely day, and hopefully the men in black don't show up to our houses.